along the wall of the brick alley. His fangs elongated, and his body thrummed with excitement. But it wasn't because of the fresh blood lacing the night air. Unlike human blood, vampire blood didn't send him into a frenzy. It was the thrill of the hunt that forced his natural instincts to the surface and propelled adrenaline through his veins. His stomach tightened, and a wicked smile tugged at his lips. The pawn he hunted was hunched over a vampire, fangs deep within her neck as her lifeless eyes stared up at the moonlit sky. The woman probably never saw him coming. Despite the warnings to remain vigilant, his all-too-cocky subjects refused to listen. It was a reminder of how complacent his people had become. By the time the killer became aware of his presence, Augustine was on him. The monster dropped his victim with a sickening thud and spun, giving Augustine his first good look at the sociopath he'd scoured the country for. He didn't appear to be more than 20 years old, but his magic-laden glowing silver eyes were brimming with the rage of someone who'd lived a hell of a lot longer, and seen far too much. Blood trailed from his mouth, dripping to the pavement as he hissed and lunged at Augustine. At least, he tried to. Before the vampire could lay a single bloodied finger on Augustine's lapel, his back was against the wall, cracking the mortar and sending bits of brick to the ground. A guttural growl filled the crisp air and shook Augustine's chest as he pressed his forearm against the monster's throat. "This ends here, with me showing as much restraint as you did to your victims." The man choked out a laugh. "The mistress will always be one step ahead of you, August." Augustine's stomach sank, but he managed to keep the surprise from his face. The man knew who he was, as did this person he called mistress. He'd never heard that term used to describe a witch. Crone, hag, and priestess were common, but mistress was new, even to him. It was strange, a mystery on top of a mystery. The name was the first solid lead they'd acquired in a month. He paused, ensuring once more there was no one else waiting to ambush him. "And pray tell, who might this mistress of yours be? I'd like to thank her for my cross-country vacation." A sardonic grin crossed the cursed vampire's face. "She sends her regards and a message." Augustine tilted his head and raised a brow. "What would that be?" "This is only the beginning." "The beginning of what?" He ground the words out. If she thought she'd keep killing the vampires of his kingdom, this mistress was sorely mistaken. It was one of the few things Augustine and August agreed upon. The killings would stop, one way or another. His inferior other half lurked deep within him, all too willing to give up control of their shared body, except when it came to his precious little witch, who he refused to allow Augustine to kill. "Your end." Before Augustine could react, the man tilted his head toward the sky and whispered in Gaelic. The killer's eyes rolled back, and he shuddered as blood bubbled out of his mouth. He choked on it, grinning like a man who'd gotten away with murder, which, essentially, he had. Augustine stepped back, narrowly avoiding the blood sputtering from the man's mouth as he fell in a heap on the pavement. Inky silver magic spilled from his eyes, mouth, and nose, matching the substance pouring from the wounds of his victims. Fuck! He was still 2 steps behind the villain pulling the strings, without any evidence pointing to her next move. Augustine reminded himself to look on the bright side. At the very least, this murderer was dead. Still, it left the lingering question of what came next. That question was too much to consider without a drink in hand. His gums ached for blood, while his mind craved the kind of relief only whiskey could bring. In truth, he'd take either, as long as it dulled the sting of his failure and fed the rage consuming him. He turned to follow an unsuspecting couple, intent on satisfying his bloodlust, when the steady thump of a walking bass line drifted from the nearest bar. The bluesy notes accompanied by a warm body would satisfy his needs nicely. He looked up to see the name of the establishment, and his jaw tightened.